From a simple grain of maize to the wine on your dinner table, everything we eat here in South Africa starts its journey in the soil. So, in this explainer, we're going to trace that exact path from the farm right to your plate and really dig into the diverse and pretty complex world of our local agriculture. So, where does your food come from? It seems like a simple question, right? But the answer, well, it's surprisingly complex. That's because here in South Africa, the journey of our food isn't just one single story. Nope. Depending on where you look, it's like a tale of two completely different worlds. You see, it's not just, one kind of farming. Here in South Africa, agriculture basically exists in two parallel universes. Seriously. One is all about sustaining a single family, and the other, that's about feeding an entire nation, and of course, turning a profit. So let's dive in and explore both. Okay, first up, we've got subsistence farming. And the name really says it all. This is about pure survival. We're talking about a family farming a small piece of land, growing a whole mix of crops like maize, beans, and potatoes, but really just to feed themselves. The work is all done by hand, and because they typically aren't using chemical fertilizers or pesticides, it's a way of farming that's actually incredibly gentle on the environment. Then, on the complete other end of the spectrum, you have commercial farming. Just think of this as farming as a massive, massive business. We're talking about huge farms, often specializing in just one or two crops to get a really high yield. It's all powered by heavy machinery and a hired workforce. The goal here isn't just to eat, no way. It's all about generating profit by selling to supermarkets, restaurants, and even exporting all over the world. And this chart, it just lays out that contrast perfectly. I mean, just look at the goals: feeding your family versus making a profit. The size, a small little piece of land versus a massive operation. And the yield, that's the amount they harvest. It's low for subsistence farming, but incredibly high for commercial. You can really see how these aren't just different methods, right? They're almost different philosophies of how to work the land. All right, so now that we've got the how down, let's get into the what. We'll start off in the plant kingdom, exploring the huge foundational crops that fill our pantries and really drive the economy. Okay, these right here are the heavy hitters of South African agriculture, and they're called cash crops for a very simple reason. They're grown to be sold on a massive scale. We're talking maize, wheat, sugarcane, sunflowers. These aren't just plants, they're absolute economic engines, creating tons of jobs from the field all the way to the factory floor. And here's where the magic happens, right? This is how those raw crops get transformed into the food in your kitchen. That maize, it becomes the pop on your breakfast table. The wheat gets milled into flour for your bread and pasta. Sugarcane is refined into the sugar for your coffee, and sunflowers are pressed into the oil you cook with. It really is a direct line from the soil straight to your supper. But it's not all about grains and sugar in South Africa's fields. Oh no. The country's super diverse climates make it a global powerhouse for fruit. We're talking world-renowned for everything from crisp apples and juicy grapes to sweet mangoes and bananas. But have you ever stopped to think about it? How does a farmer make sure that one perfect, unblemished apple makes it all the way from a branch on a tree to your supermarket shelf? It's this incredibly delicate race against time and nature, and it requires some seriously clever solutions. Okay, problem number one is just simple physics. The best fruit is often way up high, out of reach. Now, the solution might seem kind of low-tech, but it's a real testament to careful, skilled labor. We're talking teams of pickers on long, sturdy ladders, strategically harvesting every single piece. It's absolute precision work. Next problem, fruit is delicate. I mean, its skin is incredibly fragile. A machine would just bruise and ruin it in seconds. So this is where the human touch is absolutely irreplaceable. Almost every single piece of fruit is picked carefully by hand, and a lot of the time it's even wrapped individually, just to create a protective cushion for that long journey from the farm. And finally, there's that big race against the clock. The second a piece of fruit is picked, it starts to ripen and then spoil. So what's the solution? It's something called a cold chain. The fruit is moved into refrigeration almost immediately, which basically hits pause on the ripening process. That's how it stays perfectly fresh all the way to the store and then into your fruit bowl. All right, let's move away from the orchards and fields and head out to the open pastures. We're shifting gears now to talk about livestock. You know, the animals that give us our meat, dairy, eggs, and even the wool for our clothes. So, livestock farming is usually broken down into three main categories. First, you've got your large livestock, which is mostly cattle and horses. Then there's small livestock, which covers animals like sheep, goats, and pigs. And finally, you have poultry. That's all the birds we raise, like chickens, ducks, and turkeys. And this just shows you that direct connection from the animal to the product so clearly. Cattle give us beef, of course, but also the milk that becomes our cheese and yogurt. Sheep provide not just lamb for our dinner tables, but also wool for our clothes. Pigs are the source of bacon, ham, and pork. And chickens, well, chickens are total powerhouses, giving us both eggs and meat. These animals are just fundamental to our diets and our industries. So, we've covered the how and the what. But the final, and maybe the most fascinating piece of the puzzle, is the where. See, farming isn't random. Specific crops and animals thrive in specific parts of South Africa for very, very good reasons. So let's pull up a map of our meal. First stop, the Highveld. This huge inland plateau, with its amazing soil and reliable summer rains, is known as the country's grain basket for a reason. This is exactly where you'll see those iconic, absolutely enormous fields of maize, wheat, and sunflowers stretching as far as the eye can see. Okay, now let's head east over to the Lowveld. The climate here is much warmer and wetter, and that creates this humid subtropical environment that is just perfect for growing things like citrus fruits, bananas, mangoes, and of course, tons of sugarcane. From there, let's head southwest to the Western Cape. This area has that classic Mediterranean climate, warm, dry summers and cool, wet winters. And this unique weather is ideal for crops that need that big seasonal change, like the grapes that fuel South Africa's world-famous wine industry, and of course, apples and pears. So what about the huge, drier spaces of the Karoo and the Eastern Cape? Well, they might not be great for thirsty crops, but these wide-open regions are absolutely perfect for grazing. The tough, natural vegetation there can support massive herds of cattle and flocks of sheep, making this the real heartland of South Africa's meat and wool production. So what this all boils down to is that location is everything. It's not just that different plants need different weather. I mean, you can't grow sugarcane where it freezes or apples in the tropics. It's also about pure logistics. Dairy farms have to be close to towns to get that milk delivered fresh, and vegetable farms need to be near markets so their produce can be sold quickly. It's this whole complex puzzle of climate and commerce. And that brings us right back to you and your next meal. Next time you sit down to eat, just take a second and really look at your plate. Think about the incredible journey each of those things took. Was the maize for your pop grown out on the Highveld? Did that apple travel all the way from an orchard in the Western Cape? When you understand the map of your meal, you're connecting directly to the land, the climate, and the farmers who feed this nation. So, go on, take a look. What's on your plate?